Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
So, pre-release this weekend. It's getting real close to Kaladesh. So, I'm still excited. I think this is one of the most powerful. I feel like we say this almost every set these days. This is a really powerful set.
I mean, I don't know. I certainly didn't feel like Shadows over Innistrad was one of the most powerful sets ever. But I also think that the last few sets have been really strong, partly because I think that Battle for Zendikar and Oath of the Gatewatch were not the strongest. Like, they had some good things, but a lot of the things they had going on were real slave to Khans of Tarkir cards.
Yeah.
And with those cards all gone, there's a huge, huge vacuum. You know, now that both Magic Origins and Dragons of Tarkir have gone the way of Khans of Tarkir and Fate Reforged, there's just this huge, huge, huge opening for cards to come in. And the format's kind of gone into a really strange direction. So I think that the rules of engagement are so different than they were in the previous format that I think there's a lot of opportunity.
Previous stack of formats, right? Like, I feel like, just referencing the sets that you talked about, Dragons of Tarkir and Magic Origins were both of them when they entered Standard were kind of like ushering in their own separate ways. Standards that had, among other things, these fast, aggressive, and highly successful red beatdown decks, right? And that was oddly in the context of Khans of Tarkir, which had siege rhinos and so many things that are interestingly resistant to red beatdown decks. And now, you'd think like, oh, well, we took away Khans of Tarkir in many ways. You step away and you look at it as a standard set. That set and the Theros block that rotated about the same time as it was just so full of amazing mid to late game cards for Standard. And you see those things rotating away. You're like, oh, well, maybe the red beatdownish stuff will get stronger. But like you said, we're in a really strange Standard, right? Like
so if you look at the evolution,
there is no red beatdown deck right now.
We went from having the Khans, like Abzan and Jeskai and just straight up like you play the three colors, right? To Dragons of Tarkir introducing these powerful dragons and ushering in the beginning of this new red era that started, in earnest, but it started picking up steam because Magic Origins had so much, and then also stuff like Jace Vryn's Prodigy, which was so important. And then obviously Collected Company got, really, it was always good, but it really came into its own once some of the Khans and Fate Reforged stuff was out of the way. And we started just seeing this new dominant era of mid-range decks versus, fast aggro. And then with the rotation, we actually, with the most recent couple of sets, we saw a transition into this strange Standard with Emrakul and Elder Deep Fiend and Distended Mindbender, and it's starting to get progressively weirder and weirder, right?
Yeah, I feel like Shadows over Innistrad Standard is it's a weird combination of mid-range cards where the objective of a lot of the decks is to outbig each other. You know how you've made the comment that Modern is this weird two-speed format where it's either horrible beatdown or combo?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Standard is awesome mid-range cards and then just who can go super big, right? I can make an Emrakul or I can
who's got the card that lets them search their exile or graveyard, or their exile or void, to get an Emrakul in case the opponent removed all their own Emrakuls from their deck already.
Yeah, but if you just look at these decks and how the players who are behind them are describing them. They're like, nobody says I'm playing a ramp deck. They're saying I'm playing a Turbo Emrakul deck. What does that mean? Everyone's got Emrakul. Well, my deck has the objective of getting the fastest Emrakul, right? Versus somebody who's an Elder Deep Fiend chainer. Versus somebody who's, a Distended Mindbender, like mid-range guy who also Emrakuls, versus somebody whose objective is to keep upheavaling the board and taking all the turns, right? This is strange, right? Like in most standards, you don't have 5 different extravagant late game strategies. But if you look at any given top 8, there'll be 4, 5, 6 different extravagant late game strategies.
I think that, though, that we're going to see a real shift, though. I think that this new set, I think Kaladesh is going to, things have come full circle.
Yeah?
I think that the bigger, I think it's over for that. It's not that it's over. I think that we're going to loop all the way to, there's going to be some fast strategies. Let's put it that way.
So let me ask you what you mean by fast. When you think of fast for standard, I think that there's a couple of different speeds you can be. The mono red deck that has Zergo, I think that's pretty fast, right? It's not even fastest, but that's pretty fast. And you have the Tom Ross style white weenie deck, which is 14 plus 1-drop creatures. Most of them have 2 power when they're attacking the first time. That's real fast. But I feel like in terms of the realistic decks you're likely to hit in standard today, the fastest deck is probably offensively the fastest deck, not I deployed my cards at a reasonable pace fast. I'd say maybe you're disagreeing, is Brian Bronduin's Bant Humans deck is about...
You're talking before the rotation.
Before the rotation, right? That's about as fast as you're realistically going to play against right now. Do you disagree, or do you think that there's faster than this?
Once in a while people still play Tom Ross style Humans, but that's not even clearly it's only slightly faster than the Bant.
So
but I don't know.
So when I'm asking you, and it's when you say fast, do you mean Tom Ross fast, or do you mean Brian Bronduin fast, or do you mean I don't know, blue red burn deck fast, Saito fast, or maybe I don't know, Thermo Alchemist fast, because that deck's fast compared to an Emrakul deck.
I'm talking about fast compared to every single thing you just talked about.
Really? Legit fast?
We're talking fast enough that you start that dead weight is just a better card than Ruinous Path.
Yeah? Oh, I think I might like the structure of what you're talking about. So go. Tell me, where's the speed coming from?
Some of the there's so many of the most insane cards in this new set are so fast, and across lots of colors and strategies. And I think that it's going to really push out some of the old cards and make a disproportionate amount of the new cards good in ways that are, because the format's texture is so built on speed. I think one of the best examples of this, best, and this card just seems amazing to me, cross-format all-star, Toolcraft Exemplar. Toolcraft Exemplar is white for a 1/1. Dwarf Artificer. Both of those types, by the way, are good. There's rewards that are good for both of those types. But it's 1 for a 1/1. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control an artifact, just 1, literally 1, Toolcraft Exemplar gets +2/+1 until end of turn. And if you control 3 or more artifacts, it also gains first strike until end of turn.
So just let's not get too fancy here. I can go first turn Toolcraft Exemplar, second turn Thraben Inspector, right? Thraben Inspector gives me a clue. A clue is an artifact. I'm swinging now for 3 on turn 2?
Yeah.
And those are just 2 cards I would play.
Those are just random cards you would play that are good. Would you play Smuggler's Copter?
I might, in fact, do that, but I certainly would play Thraben Inspector in a white 1-drop deck.
Well, I think that Smuggler's Copter is better than every single one of those, every card you could possibly play in that deck. So I would play both of those, because Thraben Inspector is great also. And without even trying, your white aggro deck has 8 awesome sources of artifact on turn 2 to power up your better than Wild Nagato. And that's if you don't even try. Like, we didn't look at the rest of the artifacts.
So Smuggler's
Or
Copter,
things that make clues or whatever. That's just like not even trying yet.
yeah, so Smuggler's Copter we mentioned in a previous podcast, but just to reiterate, it's a 2-mana artifact vehicle. So artifact vehicles are creatures sometimes, right? So it's a 3/3 flyer. Whenever Smuggler's Copter attacks or blocks, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. That's an amazing ability on a 3/3 flyer for 2, but it has, the limitation of being a vehicle, so it has crew 1. Tap any number of creatures you control with total power 1 or more. This vehicle becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. I think for me it's a little confusing, right? Smuggler's Copter has summoning sickness, though, even though it's not always a creature, right? So you can't just play it on turn 2 and then crew it. You have to wait a turn to attack.
Well, you can crew it. It just can't attack.
Okay, fair enough.
And the attacking and blocking, exactly. You can block with it on turn 2. If you go turn 1 Thraven Inspector, turn 2 Smuggler's Copter, you could actually just block with the Copter if your opponent tries to attack.
Oh, you put people in the lockdown actually already, right? So if you go like
turn 2.
Yeah, Thraven Inspector, Smuggler's Copter, that's just the stop sign. But the stop sign isn't going to last very long, I don't think. You're probably swinging the next turn. It's unlikely they're going to have something better than a 3/3. So if you've got... It's just
like if they had Grim Flayer or something, you can just buy yourself some time.
If they've got Smuggler's Copter and it's crewed and somebody just kills it while it's a creature, you don't lose the crew, right? You just lose the Smuggler's Copter, correct? Right. Yep. That's pretty cool.
You can also just crew it whenever you want.
So you can just crew as an instant speed ability.
Yep.
So one of the things I think is cool about vehicles is when you're playing against certain kinds of effects like...
There are times where your opponent will want to do things to your cards, like lock it down with a specific card, and like Baven,
send
before
to sleep
combat.
Or something.
Send to sleep, anything. If they want to tap one of your cards, you can just then tap it in response. But the main thing is the fact that you just have the ability to make all your creatures tapped whenever you want, as long as you're going to turn your Copter into a crew or into a creature. So if for whatever reason, if your opponent had something that forced you to block, if your opponent had a way of, there aren't a ton of applications to that beyond just knowing that you don't have to crew in the middle of combat. You can crew whenever you want. That's the important thing. Like, you could set up a crew and then sacrifice the creature. Like, you could crew your Smuggler's Copter, sacrifice the creature, do some other stuff, and then attack with the Copter. There's just lots of little things. It's just important to realize you can just, when you have a Smuggler's Copter, or any vehicle for that matter, you can just tap your creatures when you feel like it.
That's interesting. Well, you just always get the ability to take an action. You're complicating the game a little bit, and that gives opportunities for you to play better and opportunities for your opponents to make mistakes. And especially these cards are new. I think that will be a learning curve for a lot of players in the first couple of months that Kaladesh is legal.
And to be clear, I think that this white 1-drop Toolcraft Exemplar is going to be the textbook case of that, because everybody's going to realize he's a 1-mana 3/2, right? But the thing is that when you have 3 artifacts, he becomes a first striker. That's just night and day different. And what's going to happen is there's going to be times where you have 2 Smuggler's Copters and your opponent doesn't realize that the clue token is an artifact, and they just throw away guys. Like they just throw away a creature. That's going to happen so much. So much. But the Smuggler's Copter is definitely, in my opinion, early favorite for best card in the set.
Really?
Yeah.
That is strong. That's strong praise considering some of the cards in this set. I mean,
and we're talking easy top 5, but my early pick for best card in the set.
So, I obviously have not mentally envisioned the speed of the White Weenie deck that you've got in your head, and maybe I will.
I'm not even, dude. That's the White Weenies without even trying. We haven't even gotten started yet.
I will, maybe.
That's literally, if you don't try, you just get literally to add these 2 cards to existing strategy. Already, it's night and day how much stronger your deck is.
Sure, but I mean, all I was going to say is some of those Planeswalkers, the Nissa and the Chandra, both are so strong. I see them both as being, format staples. So Just
So
number one
Toolcraft
in the set is a big get.
I mean, and I think they're both very strong cards inherently. I think it's going to be interesting to see what the format's texture looks like, because this is a fast freaking format. Like, because this is not the only this card. It's like we're on the same page about this card. Is just like better than Wild Mikado, right?
Which one? The Dwarf or the Smugglers?
Toolcraft Exemplar. Well, both. The Toolcraft Exemplar
they're both,
is better than
Wild Mikado, right?
And then Smuggler's Copter is better than every other card in the set from my perspective.
They're both Wild Mikado. That's the reason I was asking which one you meant.
Yeah. Well, one of them is merely Wild Mikado and also flies and also is a looter. Yeah, and dodges hard removal.
I was asking which one you meant because they're both Wild Mikado, right? So I think the Toolcraft Exemplar is... I guess it's just better than Wild Mikado, right? Wild Mikado asks you for quite a bit in order to get...
I'm talking about in a standard capacity. I mean, we'll see which one is better in Modern. Well, it's not like Wild Mikado's like ripping it up in Modern these days.
Wild Mikado has... It kind of is. Wild Mikado has had a heck of a career, you know?
Oh, yeah, of course. The Toolcraft Exemplar, early favorite to be... This guy's going to have a good career, too. Let's put it that way.
Well, I was thinking when I was seeing some of these guys, Toolcraft Exemplar being high on the list, is there's not that much reason to play one color of affinity in Modern versus another color of affinity, right? Like, people play red affinity, and sometimes they don't even play, what's the name of it? The bolt that
Galvanic Blast?
Yeah, they don't even play that card sometimes, right? Or they don't even play Shrapnel Blast. Like, if I were to play Red Affinity, I'd be like, oh, well, maybe I'll play 8 Blasts. That seems like it makes a lot of sense to me. Or sometimes I'd be like, well, why don't people play Blue Affinity so they can play Thoughtcast? You know, and they just, it seems almost haphazard which color they play, because most of their cards have no color, right? Do you think that Toolcraft Exemplar could just go in an affinity deck? Does that make sense, or is it
it could
too weak given the context?
I think so. It could, and I think that Dispatch is another great reason to play white in affinity.
Oh yeah,
but I think that affinity is just really not as much about the colors, and I think that Toolcraft Exemplar is like it. So it's great, and it might be right to play in affinity. It totally might. But it's like, it's not an artifact. It doesn't actually fit your theme. First Strike is a bit wasted. And also, it doesn't fly. Like, I think the affinity really is about evasion in many, many ways.
Oh, yeah. Even the guys who don't fly either can move counters around or never get blocked, right?
Now, Smuggler's Copter, on the other hand.
Yet another reason.
Copter. Dude, Smuggler's Copter is absurd in affinity. Smuggler's Copter is going to be absurd in, like, Legacy. It might be absurd. It might be playable in Vintage. Why would you not just... Can you imagine in Legacy just having like 4 Ancient Tombs and 4 City of Traders and you're that guy? You know, but you're just playing Smuggler's Copter because it's that guy? I mean, like...
You know what's crazy about Smuggler's Copter, which we haven't even touched on yet, is this guy's a looter, right?
Yeah.
The entire previous set, the core mechanic was madness. Like... Is there something that might be enabled, like maybe spitting out lightning bolts while drawing cards is pretty good, right? Maybe that's a thing that this guy might want to do. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of unbelievable interactions. Smuggler's Copter is just weird. That's my spell queller of the set, where it's like, what? Like, why? Like, and then, yeah, I mean, yeah, big surprise, spell queller is absurd. Yeah, it looks absurd. Have you read it? So I don't know. Smuggler's Copter is a little crazy, but this is, I mean, that's just part of it. Like, there's so many of these things, right? Like
this set is real strong. I mean, I just keep seeing great cards that are obviously going to be format staples or cross format staples.
I mean, like, there's this Inventor, like Inventor's Apprentice. 1 mana for a 1/2 that gets +1/+1 if you have any artifacts. Which we've already covered. There are just good artifacts available.
Yeah, like the thing about that is you just play cards people are already playing. There's just incidental artifacts. That's the...
And then, like, Glint Nest Crane. This card is, like really good. It's 1 in a blue for a 1/3 flyer. Look at the top. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal an artifact card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom. So the Augur of Bolas was, like, a staple throughout its life in Standard, and it showed up a little bit in Modern. Glint Nest Crane is 1 in a... It's the same cost, same stats, but then it flies, and also it looks at 4 cards instead of 3.
So this card...
Now, it looks at artifact instead of sorcery or instant, but it's not like artifact is like the worst creature type, or the worst card type.
Well, especially given the context of the format, right? The upcoming format. It might even be more, right? Like, you would miss with an Augur Bolus sometimes. I mean, you could miss with a Glint Nest Crane sometimes, too. But I was thinking about this card from 2 different dimensions. Number one, you were around in the 90s, right? Do you remember when Jamie Wakefield was playing with Sage Owls and was like, Sage Owl is better than Impulse? And nobody really thought that was true. But Jamie did. But, like, there were people who played Sage Owls because... they did give you some selection, and you played in certain contexts, like in an Imperial Armor deck, for example. Sage actually kind of made sense there. Now, fast forward to, and I've just thought about this, right? Because this is an active debate in my infancy as a Magic strategist, right? So it's something that stays with me. But if you just flash forward 16 years or something, last year. Do you remember what card I played in the 5-color Blue Dragons deck? This card is so much better than Omen Speaker.
Oh,
right? Like, it's just like
night and day.
And I don't think I ever lost a game that I cast an Omen Speaker, by the way. Because the Omen Speaker was exactly what you needed, right? It either it just got in the way and you just didn't die to somebody's red aggro creature because they just bought time, and also gave you a blue pip so that your Master of Waves would be good, right? It's just doing exactly what you want in this context. But also, when the last Omen Speaker I cast was in the top 8. I cast it on the second turn, and I just could hear it behind me because people were watching. And Chris Bakula went crazy on Twitter. He's just like, I read it later. He's just like, I cast the Omen Speaker. My opponent just slumped in his chair because he had kept this hand that was all Foul Tongue invocations. He's just like, I know how to beat all the Dramicas and the Yojitais. I got these. Omen Speaker was just there, right? But this card is so much better. Even if all you're getting with Omen Speaker, with Glint Nest Crane, is cards like Prophetic Prism. Like, that's pretty good. Like, it's super solid to do that.
I got a couple artifacts to run by you to consider for their interaction with Glint Nest Crane. So, have you considered Smuggler's Copter? The Crane was born to crew a copter.
He's exactly the size to crew a copter.
Exactly the size. Now, what about a Sky Sovereign Council flagship?
I want to talk about this one.
Yeah, he doesn't. Well, then we should loop back because it feels like that's a big loop, like a whole big topic and worthy of discussion on its own.
I think that's like an episode. Sky Sovereign Council flagship.
How do you feel about Filigree Familiar? Like, that's a little curve, right? Just 2 into 3, the Crane into the Familiar, which is the 3-cost 2/2 that when it enters the battlefield you gain 2 life, and when it dies you draw a card. What kind of that's like a great opening against some kind of an aggressive strategy.
Oh, right? Yeah. So the thing is, like, you can craft like kind of these sequences that are amazing against certain decks, right? So also the Crane gets the Filigree Familiar and then curves it, right? I think that's what you're pointing at. I don't think that that's a natural curve to play in game 1. But if you're going to devote these cards to your side, maybe you play the Crane.
Really?
I don't think I'm playing the Familiar in game 1. No?
Why not? Oh, yeah.
Is it just Kitchen Finks? Am I just crazy?
It's not just Kitchen Finks. It's definitely way worse than Kitchen Finks. But it's like an artifact. Like, what you're not every deck has access to such nice things, and not every format. I mean, Kitchen Finks would be amazing. Besides, it's the Filigree Familiar is like, it's like the littlest Thragtusk.
And he's so cute, right?
He's so cute.
Cutest guy.
So, like, you can fix your mana. Right, like you could have Cultivator's Caravan.
I guess if you're playing these cards, like, fair decks don't want to play against Filigree Familiar, right? Like, this is the worst card ever to play against if you're playing fair. Like, if you can't choose...
Well, if you're playing fast and fair, I think that you can just, like, outclass it. Even though it's a 2-for-1, you can still just do better than it.
Like, no, it's awful to play against this card if you've got Oath of Liliana. Right, like this is just you don't want. Sure. This is just not the fight you want. Like your incidental card advantage is just like barf. That's like the other deck is got to be stacked with 2-for-1s if this is in their deck.
Now, like these two, I think are two of the most exciting to get with the Crane. Cataclysmic Gearhulk and Torrential Gearhulk. Torrential Gearhulk in particular we should talk about, man. But like both of those, they're insane bomb, unbelievable victory conditions. They're also artifacts. So if you just have a couple in your deck, the Cranes help find them faster.
How insane is it when you use the Crane and then your follow-up is Cultivator's Caravan? So Cultivator's Caravan, it can tap immediately for mana, right?
Yep.
It's just like a signet when you cast for 3. It's just not
especially
a 5/5
play Galvanic Bombardment or Deadweight or whatever you're into, right? Like, or just if it's on turn 4, you could just play it and then cast another Crane.
Well, I was thinking like you can go Crane Caravan and Caravan whatever. Maybe just don't tap at that turn. Then your opponent's just 4 million in their plan. You throw away your Crane, and then you're just like fourth land Cataclysmic Gearhulk off the Caravan, and you keep both your perms. Like that could be really. I mean, depending obviously on what the opponent does. Just doing that in the abstract doesn't necessarily get you any card advantage. But that's like a pretty natural home for all these cards to be played in sequence, right? You just turn 4 into the Cataclysmic Gearhulk there.
Yeah, and I mean, Hedron Archive, another great artifact, legal.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yep. Or it's not necessarily a great artifact, but depending on what your deck's trying to do, you might want Corrupted Graphstone. Like it's just it's not like nearly as natural of a synergy, but you might just want it for other reasons.
I was thinking, the Crane actually implies a really interesting deck that isn't completely unique in the history of Magic or Magic Standard, but is very different than a blue-white deck that we've typically think of in the past, right? It's very, very different, but you could just easily just see playing it. Where you're going like Gearhulks and Artifact Mana and just like maybe even like Fabrication. You're just deploying more and more permanents to the ground. Getting card advantage over and over again.
I think Torrential Gearhulk is a challenging but not impossible one in conjunction with the Crane. Because like part of even though the Crane finds the Gearhulk, and that's obviously fantastic, and they're both just great cards, the challenge is the Torrential Gearhulk asks you to play with enough instants that you can reliably have one in your graveyard when you play the Gearhulk that you want to use proactively. And the Crane asks for you to have so many artifacts in your deck that you're reliably hitting one.
Well, it's not just that. The Gearhulk really wants to be casting, ideally anyway, wants to be casting a flamboyant instant, right? It's not enough for it to cast an Anticipate, right?
I disagree. It's a 5/6 flash. Like if its fail state is Anticipate. I'm not saying that's not what you want.
That's great. That's of course that's great. But what I'm saying is, this is what I'm imagining. My Gearhulk is casting Grip of Desolation. That's what I want to have happen. Just back-to-back 6s. Just like eat your creature land, eat your Gideon. Oh my! Have you ever eaten a Gideon that was supposedly indestructible or whatever, and a creature land during combat?
Unlimited. Yeah.
Only in I've done this in Constructed, and
Constructed also. Right. I just thought Limited was the sicker brag.
Okay, well that's amazing and Limited, right? So, but I mean, I want a grip, and I liked Grip in the last, not the current format, but the previous format. I loved Grip, and I think that Grip is gonna have potentially a resurgence because Torrential Gearhulk, it's just the most sick thing you can do with a Torrential Gearhulk, and it's contextually interesting, right?
I just think Grip of Desolation is a card that costs 6.
Yep.
And, like, I'm on Deadweight is better than Ruinous Path, so I'm real cool on Grip of Desolation, if you feel me.
Well, if that's the case, maybe the Gearhulk's casting red spells. That's the thing that I was thinking. How am I going to stack this thing together? And I'm envisioning, the new Galvanic Fiery Impulse, maybe. And that's not very exciting, but it's probably exactly what you want sometimes.
I wonder if there's a blue-red deck where your Crane is finding stuff like Torrential Gearhulk, but you have plenty of other artifacts, and then you have stuff like Incendiary Sabotage. Incendiary Sabotage 2 red instant as an additional cost, sacrifice an artifact, and it deals 3 damage to each creature. Like, this one is like a super sick sweeper if you're living in the world of just like wanting to desperately deal with aggro, because like Radiant Flames and stuff like that, also good, but doesn't hit stuff like Smuggler's Copter.
Well, the fact that this is an instant just gives it such an interesting layer of play. If you're sacrificing an artifact creature, for example, that would have gone to the graveyard anyway because it has 3 or fewer toughness, then this is just perfect, right? Like,
I don't know, Filgrease Familiar maybe?
Well, then you get all these extra bonuses from that. Like, I think you get to like check off a whole bunch of boxes on your bucket list when you do that. 3rd turn Filgrease Familiar, 4th turn cast Incendiary Sabotage off of it. I think you just get to go to heaven when you die when you do that.
Even if times are like really, really desperate, you can go Torrential Gearhulk, sack the Gearhulk to the Incendiary Sabotage that you just flash back. Whatever it takes, man. Sometimes you just got to survive.
I mean, that's true, and that's a great story when you do it. And yes, I agree. I think that card's really, really good. You know, if the format is in that direction, and it sounds to me like you think the format's going to be in that direction. I think the format could go in a couple of different directions, right? There are cool mid-range cards in the set too, like really, really. Like flexible, interesting mid-range cards. Like, what do you think about Hijack? Hijack is a red sorcery, right? It's like 1 red. Gain control of target artifact or creature until end of turn. Untap it. It gains haste until end of turn. It's a threaten for the same amount of mana, but you also could get an artifact with it. Like, this is a card that's clearly going to see play, depending on what kind of cards other people are playing. Yeah.
I mean, it depends on what kind of cards other people are playing, but it's mostly just like active treason so far. Like, I mean, really, I guess you could like steal a Hedron Archive or whatever. And yes, it steals vehicles, and that's like something. I mean,
I think that the fact that it could steal a Sky Sovereign, and then you could just like, it already has haste, right? And then you can like crew it or something. That seems pretty powerful. No?
Fine. No, it's fine. It's just, I mean, this card is like very slightly better than active treason.
Yeah, but it doesn't cost anymore.
Yeah, but like, that's fine. It's just like, it's a small, tiny little upgrade, and it might have uses. I think it's going to be useful mostly just like the way that active treason would, but with like a couple extra applications. And that whether or not it's good is really just going to be a function of if active treason is good in this format.
That's fair.
It might be. I mean, it's fine. It's good to recognize because that is like a decent active treason. Like, most active treasons are not a decent active treason. It's like good to note when the good ones come out where it's 3 costs with some amount of upside.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what dictates if active treasons are good at all, typically if opponents' sideboard strategies are about generating great blockers, then active treasons become amazing, right? Like, they're going to defend themselves by playing a thing that has high toughness and then think they're going to hold off 3 attackers with it for a turn, then they're often just dead.
I just don't think active treason is looking that good because I think that too many of the best creatures are going to have flash or comes into play abilities or
just too
like
fast.
It's not about Ulamog, it's about Emrakul. Yeah. And it's not about Kaladesh, it's about Spellqueller. And it's not about it's not about Ulvenwald Hydra, it's about Ishkana Graph Widow. So I don't know. We'll see. Plus, there's just going to be too many like 1 cost and 2 cast creatures, which is not what you want to be.
Well, it's obviously awful when you're playing against White Weenie, right? Unless the thing that you're stealing is their high-end Archangel, but that's unlikely to happen.
So here's a mid-range card for you. Aerial Responder, 1 white for a 2/3 flying vigilance lifelink. It's the white Vampire Nighthawk.
The white Vampire Nighthawk is I've heard him called that many a time already, and he has never even seen tournament play yet. Are you asking what I think about him?
Yeah. This card seems like it's right up your alley.
Because I love Vampire Night. I don't love him. I don't know. He's probably good.
I think he's good.
I mean, Death Touch wasn't why you ever played Vampire Nighthawk, right? Like, you played Vampire Nighthawk because
the 2/3 flying lifelink. Really,
it was so good, right? Because of that, and Aerial Spider
decent.
Well, Aerial Sponder's better than Vampire Nighthawk at Vampire Nighthawk's core competence, which is defense due to the 3rd toughness. You know, especially contextually, the last time it was in Standard, the default burn spell dealt 2 damage for 1 mana, right? So it the 3rd toughness is actually really relevant. But once you had it in play, the fact that it had Death Touch is actually quite useful. But Aerial Sponge is actually better than Vampire Nighthawk at the thing that you would typically play Vampire Nighthawk for, because this guy plays offense-defense, right? Like, he actually will hold off opponent white weenie decks very, very well while actually gaining life by attacking every turn. It's probably really good. But you probably...
the biggest challenge for him is, I think, the fact that there's so many good 3s. But there's just a lot of great cards that cost 3 right now.
But I think if you're playing...
But I think he's good.
You're playing a certain context, right? Like, what if you're playing a deck that wants to play relatively expensive spells, right? You have, like, a bunch of 5-casters in your deck. You just need to get there. He's probably really, really good at holding off other people's early to mid-range cards while advancing your board state and getting you where you want to go. And I think that in some fast matches or fast mirror matches, people will side him in, right? So if you have, like, Jackal Pup decks, sometimes they're going to side him in. But he's going to be... I think he's going to be an erratic tool for those kind of decks because, number one, they're not optimized to cast 3s usually. And second of all, sideboard strategies where fast decks try to go very, very middle, sometimes, very, very wildly volatile results. Like, sometimes they're amazing because the opponent stayed small and one Aerial Sponder holds off 3 of their cards, or actually just trumps 3 of their cards. But when other people are doing similar or maybe bigger things or have more mana than you after sideboarding, then they're just like, you have a pretty crappy card. But I think he's probably going to be good. That's my...
Oh, yeah. So here's some great combos with Aerial Responder. Combat tricks. Because, like, your opponent... Like, if your opponent has, like, they say they attack with, like, Spell Queller, they have, like, they have stuff like Reflector Mage, they have Sylvan Advocate, I don't know, there's lots of 2/3s, right? And there are going to be times where you can attack with Aerial Responder and you have plausible deniability because your Aerial Responder has lifelink. So the fact that your opponent has, like, 1 Spell Queller in play, like, are they going to not block? And if they take the hit, fine, you just taxed them. And if they block, what if you have a trick? What if you have anything? Right, like there's this great new one. 1 mana, Blossoming Defenses. 1 mana for +2/+2 and Hexproof.
I mean, there are a bunch of playable giant growths, right?
Yep.
Blossoming Defenses are probably the flashiest because it's going to see cross-format play in my estimation.
But even just on color in this set.
Oh, yeah, there's
Built to Last. White instant, target creature gets +2/+2. If it's an artifact, creature gains indestructible until end of turn. So even though Aerial Responder doesn't get the artifact bonus, you might be playing it for your other... Like, you're partly playing it for the +2/+2, but you're also partly playing it because sometimes it's like, okay, well, I guess my Thopter... Like, let's say somebody goes to, like, shatter your Smuggler's Copter. Well, you can, at instant speed, crew something, or you crew it with something, and then... Built to Last, make it indestructible.
I mean, you could crew it with this guy even if he attacks, right? Because he has Vigilance.
Yeah, but you'd have to do it on defense. Like, you can't... You have to crew before attacking. So you don't
I'm just saying to play with the Built to Last, right?
Oh, right, yeah.
Right,
yeah,
so if somebody just, like, goes to shatter your awesome vehicle, you just go, like, crew Built to Last in response. That's awesome. But then there's
the other combo, actually, on this guy that I wanted to mention before we move too far past him is, stuff like Kozilek's Return.
He has 3 toughness.
Yeah, but he's the type of dude who creates standoffs sometimes so that you get extra value out of your spell, And, like, sometimes you might play a deck with Radiant Flames or something, right? Where sometimes you want to be able to do 3 because 3 is like such a great amount to be able to do right now. But when you have Aerial Responder in play, just tap your lands in such a way so that you only do 2.
Yeah, that's
Which one do you have your eye on? Which is the one you're looking at?
Like, which card am I looking at? And I'm like, this is the card that I want. Oh, I was just going to say, just to close the circle, there's Built to Smash, which I think is a this card is like not strictly better than a card that was an extended multiple Grand Prix winner, but I think it's going to probably be a pretty good card. So it's R for instant target attacking creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn, which is, putting it in, is it Brute Force, the name of the card?
Yep.
Brute Force range. But if it's an artifact creature gets trample until end of turn, that's a powerful ability on the correct creature, right? But I just thought, we were talking about the green and the white giant growth type tricks. What am I looking at that I think is super exciting?
Dude, what do you think of Fumigate?
Well, yeah, so that's a card I have my eye on. So I think it's just going to be a format staple for sure.
This is 3 white sorcery. Destroy all creatures. You gain 1 life for each creature destroyed this way.
I think, like, in terms of the 5 casting cost, standard, cycle of standard legal wraths, I think it's one of the best ones. Like, that's a really powerful ability, just to gaining a little additional life. Because if you think about it in context, most of the things that this kind of cycle of wraths have done over the course of the last, how long have they been popular? 10 years now? They either did not, like, Rout did nothing when you were casting it for 5, or End Hostilities, rarely did you get the kicks on that. Or, like, if you're not going to awaken something, most of the time you're just casting it for 5, you're just getting the same ability. Or, Hallowed Burial, put them on the bottom. The de facto is there were creatures in play. You cast something for 5, now their creature's not in play. This time there are creatures in play, you cast something for 5, and you get quite a bit for it relative to what usually happens when you cast it for 5.
And it's important to note that you're getting life off your own, too.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're not trying to kill your own, but sometimes you create standoffs where, like, you had some Gideon tokens, or you had a Crane, or you had, whatever. You had some 1/1s from your Secure the... I guess that's gone now. But there's, like, lots of random miscellaneous stuff where you could just pick up, like, you got 2 or 3 life. They had 4 guys, so you got 4 from that. If you Fumigate and gain 6 life, wow, you are putting yourself back into, like, a much more comfortable position.
It's not really that you're doing it, but the opponent's just like, I'm not doing it. That's kind of how it is.
The interesting thing on Fumigate, though, is the fact that Cataclysmic Gearhulk is also a great sweeper for 5 and white. So you have, like, 2 great different sweepers that encourage playing against them in different ways.
You might play them both in the same deck, too.
Oh, yeah.
That really is a devil's bargain sometimes for people. Especially if you look at, the finals of the World Championship. It just went to standoffs, and then whoever wrathed at the right moment just won the game. And that's probably going to be a common play pattern if your envision of the upcoming standard comes true. Going to be a lot of standoffs, and figuring out the right standoff breaker is going to be awesome.
I do think that Fumigate does a bunch of really cool things in the standard that are worth noting, like Selfless Spirit. Fantastic combo with Fumigate.
Well, yeah,
you're not gaining life from your spirits that don't die, but in exchange they're not dead.
Well, I mean, but their opponents' things are all dead. That's real good.
Right. And Fumigate, another nice one. I think Fumigate is great in black-white. I think that black-white has a big hole from Languish being gone. And Fumigate is a great way to fill in that gap,
I think that one of the things that's great about Fumigate is it's just a card that you can have in your hand when somebody casts Emrakul. Right? So they cast Emrakul, and they're like, okay, I'm going to go take your turn, but you're going to get a turn before they have their big turn. Right. And you can always just kill their Emrakul. Because they can either cast it for you can cast it for you. But unless you have a counterspell or some way to, make yourself discard it, it's just a great card to have against what is currently, one of the preferred ways to end games.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think this card's real important.
And I'm not sure what the face of blue-white, like if blue-white's a real thing or not. It might be. But if blue-white is a real thing, I would not be surprised if blue-white, I definitely think blue-white spirits and something with, like, lots of creatures, that's totally a thing. But if there's, like, a Shaheen type of blue-white, some sort of a blue-white for the discriminating pure control player, I think Fumigate has real good chances of being one of the central pieces of that. What I'm curious about, though,
I was thinking, I think that the preferred control decks are going to be probably board control decks, like heavy on white, maybe with Angel End games, maybe figuring out to play Planeswalkers.
Well, there's a new Planeswalker actually for blue-white. I'm curious your thoughts. Yeah.
So
Dovin Ban, 4 mana. This is 2 white blue for a Planeswalker with 3 loyalty. You want to hit his abilities?
Yeah. So he has 3 loyalty, but for a +1 additional loyalty until your next turn, up to 1 target creature gets -3/-0, and its activated abilities can't be activated. So, and then he has -1. You gain 2 life and draw a card. He has -7. You get an emblem with your opponents can't untap more than 2 permanents during their untap step. So the +1 ability is an ability they're toying with more and more. We saw variations on Jace, etc., where it doesn't kill something, but it reduces its likelihood of killing you, right? So the interesting thing about if you've got like Dovin Ban against one creature, it largely neutralizes that creature, unless it's huge, which forces people to play multiple creatures, which, this is like the age-old Icy Manipulator move where you're setting them up for something like a Fumigate or Cataclysmic Gearhulk, etc., where you're going to have the opportunity to gain card advantage. I think the -1 ability is awesome, right? If you just play Dovin Ban, you could draw up to 3 cards and gain 6 life, and I love for the potential Shaheen-style controlling blue-white that they are bundling things that you would want to do anyway, including drawing cards, killing lots of creatures, with life gain, which is this thing that blue-white decks over the years have either been loath to spend extra cards on or happy to spend extra cards on, but would spend extra cards on either way, right? So both Fumigate and this have a nice little bonus there. And then I think that the -7 is kind of interesting to talk about. It's like among the least powerful finishing moves that any Planeswalkers ever displayed, I think. It's just like, I guess it would have a dramatic effect on a lot of games, but still compare it to what Nis is doing right now, and I'm not excited. What do you think?
I think Dovin Ban was designed to trick people. It's full of things that you think you want, and it's lined up using it exploits so many shortcuts that people have developed for things that they feel like should be metrics for making a Planeswalker good. I don't know that it's not playable. I mean, it looks like maybe it's okay. Like, it's fine. It's not like the bar is very weird for Planeswalkers, because even like a very mediocre Planeswalker can be like totally decent, right? Like, and I think Dovin has like chances of being decent. Like, so walking through his abilities.
I mean, he's the 4th best Planeswalker in this set, I think. I don't think I think he's definitely going to be playable.
Maybe he's the 4th best. There's the pre-con only cards.
Oh, I wasn't counting those.
So Dovin. So let's walk through some of Dovin.
Yeah.
The thing that everybody looks at, they're like, oh my god. You know what? Planeswalkers like Jaces and Elspeths that cost 4 that are blue or white. I'm into them, assuming they have a protect myself ability. Oh, he does. It also offers something new so that you can like tell yourself that it's better than it is. And then it's like, oh, but they need to draw cards. Oh, he does, and more. Well, what about his ultimate? I don't really care about that much. Oh, yeah, this lets you just totally, like, just imagine playing the game with your opponent only getting to untap 2 land per turn, or, 2 permanents at all. So if they untap their creatures, they don't even untap their land. How great is that for you? And it's like, okay, this guy, his ultimate is just really not that good compared to some of the other ultimates.
Oh, no, it's fine. Full on okay. But that's a lot of investment.
Maybe okay. Yeah, it's just not going to – there's going to be a lot of games where you have the ability to do this and you just can't because you would lose. But his -1 ability, it's like, okay, I'm – like, you gain 2 life and draw a card, and now you just have a Planeswalker with 2 loyalty in play?
That's great sometimes.
I don't know. Maybe I'm envisioning a different format, but like I feel like you're often not going to be able to draw a card without just losing Dovin. I mean, it could be fine sometimes, but like that ability is like the most attractive ability on the card by far. But it's still just like not naturally that strong.
Playing Dovin Ban against White Weenie, right? And they just go like they're the kind of White Weenie that's just guy. Like, you just have no plays with Dovin, right? Like, you play him on turn 4 if you're facing down attackers. You +1 him, neutralize one of their White Weenies, the other 2 just kill him, right? He just goes to 4.
And that's not even counting if somebody's playing with things like Anthem effects so that they surprise get you with more damage, or they have haste, or they have, like, if they have flash creatures for surprise more damage. Right? Like, there's so many things that can go wrong. And there's lots of things that miss this guy, that this guy misses. Like, Dovin... He gets the worst of it against Smuggler's Copter. Because doesn't it feel like Smuggler's Copter should be stopped by Dovin? No.
But you can't even target it.
Right, because it's not a creature. And then also, like, Dovin... Imagine how Dovin lines up against Chandra, Torch of Defiance.
Well, I think that's the biggest knock against Dovin, is that forget about what you can do in blue and white for 4. Just think about what you can do in a game of Magic for 4. In any format where this card is legal, then Chandra is also going to be legal. And you're talking about a Planeswalker that costs exactly the same total amount of mana, has more starting loyalty, and all of its abilities are more interesting.
And has more abilities. And if you literally just head-to-head him, I mean, I think part of Dovin's purpose is to make Chandra look good. Because, like, if you just use Dovin and draw a card, Chandra just kills Dovin and is just in play. But if you just... And that's if you... Oh, go ahead.
Are Chandra and Dovin not friends in the story?
I don't know, man. All I know is that Dovin is going to get wrecked no matter... Dovin's top ability doesn't even hit Planeswalkers, or it'd be, like, so much more interesting of a card. I'm cool on Dovin. I think it's totally playable, potentially, if the format were to go a particular way, but I am not like rushing to try to put Dovin into all my decks.
I agree with you. I'm not rushing to put Dovin in all my decks. But think about the current Jace 5, right? The Jace Unraveler of Secrets. The guy got a complete bad rap because he was always going to be in the same formats league with the 2-mana Jace creature, right? Jace.
Well, that's not true. That's not true right now.
No, he initially got a bad rap, right? But he ended up being very widely played, in particular in decks that just didn't want to have creatures, so because they didn't want to have a liability around the cheaper Jace. And you're like, look, this guy's always going to be worse than the 2-mana Jace, which is arguably the best creature in the format for a long stretch of time. But he found a home because contextually he made sense. I think
that's a good point.
If you're just going to play like a clunky 4 or 5 mana card that has an okay ability to defend itself. But
I'm not just going to do that. Let's just be clear about that. I mean, maybe I'm willing to, but I'm not just going to lead with needing that.
I mean, I've cast a lot of Jace Unraveler Secrets, and my opponents were just helpless. And that card is like, it's like not that good. It's full on not that good. But in the right like in the games that I had it in my deck, like I never start that card. But, I mean, the world champion did, and it was right for him.
Yeah, it was good there. Like, what do you think of Cloud Blazer, though, in terms of a way to draw cards if you're just going to be dinking around?
I think that card is okay. So Cloud Blazer is 3 white and blue for a 2/2 flying. When Cloud Blazer enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life and draw 2 cards. The big knock against this card is it isn't as good as Muldrifter. Okay, Muldrifter's not legal, and
True.
Like that's a big plus for Cloud Blazer.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time we were casting Muldrifter for 3 and not for 5. So, which is most of the time I think I cast it for 3 and not for 5. But I think this card's okay. I think there's definitely going to be a home for it. I don't oddly enough, I don't think that it's probably going to be that good in like a blue-white flying beatdown deck. But I think
you don't think the 5 cost 2/2 flyer is
no?
That's not.
I don't think so.
That's weird.
Think that if I'm going to go to 5, I'm probably. I think that
Archangel Avacyn, maybe?
Yeah, there's a built-in combo, right? Like Selfless Spirit and Archangel Avacyn with no other cards, like no other cards known in the deck have such a great synergy to them, right? Either one can save the other one, either either direction, but then just Selfless Spirit can just activate Archangel Avacyn to just annihilate the opponent with no other catalyst. So I think a lot of the time when you're playing against Archangel Avacyn, part of the game is like, how do I keep that thing from flipping? If the opponent has the ability to just unilaterally flip it, it's bad times for you. So I don't think this card is going to see play in those kind of decks typically, because Archangel Avacyn is so much better, and 5 is probably...
Where will it see play, though?
I think that oddly it will see play in decks that just want to have like weird attrition-y stuff. There's these contexts where you're like, I just want to get a little bit ahead. And if I just get a little bit ahead 3 or 4 times, because the opponent doesn't go big enough, but they give me enough time, then I will have an advantage, and then I'll eventually win. I think there are a lot of instances where the right thing is like, I hesitate to use the term Siege Rhino, because Siege Rhino is such a stronger card in the abstract than Cloud Blazer, but you know what I mean, right? Like if I just get a little bit ahead, the opponent just doesn't have the kind of like take 4 consecutive turns or like strip my hand or tap all my
Can I give you a dream?
Yeah.
Cloud Blazer plus Eldrazi Displacer.
That's, I think, a reasonable dream.
So now, every 3 mana you pay, you draw 2 extra cards and gain 2 life. And that's not just divinations, because divination only nets you +1. Every 3 mana you pay nets you 2 extra cards and then also 2 life. That's exactly what you want when you're spending your mana drawing some cards, is also some free life. If you just, if you have even just a couple Cloud Blazers in your Eldrazi Displacer deck, which, by the way, Eldrazi Displacer is definitely looking absurdly good. But, if you just have, a couple Cloud Blazers, it adds such an overwhelming attrition aspect. If you get into this weird top deck standoff, right, if you just go Cloud Blazer, you're going to bury your opponent, completely bury them in card advantage very quickly.
And the life is probably meaningful sometimes. That's the thing.
Yes. I think definitely. So, here's another one for you. Essence Flux.
You love Essence Flux. You've mentioned it every week for
Dude,
the past
Essence
couple of
Flux
weeks.
with Cloud Blazer.
Yeah.
That's 1 mana, draw 2 and gain 2.
So you're on board with Cloud Blazer. You think he's probably playable, right?
Yeah, playable. I mean, it's really tough competition when Fumigate, Cataclysmic Gearhulk, Archangel Avacyn, there's
Thalia's Lancers. I think that's the problem.
There's so many absurd 5s.
Thalia's Lancers does a lot of what Cloud Blazer does better than Cloud Blazer. That's the thing. So there's a tension there. So you don't gain the 2 life with Thalia's Lancers, but I mean, Demonic Tutor versus Draw 2 is not. That's not a contest.
It's not Demonic Tutor. That's not. It's it's Seed Time, or not Seed Time. It's a.
It's not Worldly Tutor either, right? It's Time of Need. That's fine.
You know what's funny is the Angel of Invention would be just unbelievable in so many formats. I'm not sure. I mean, I think this one's got chances, but man, is this
hard to see this play.
This is 3 white for a 2/1 Flying Vigilance, Lifelink, Fabricate 2, and other creatures you control get +1/+1. And obviously, Fabricate makes it so that when it comes into play, you can either put 2 +1/+1 counters on Angel of Invention, or you can put 2 1/1 colorless artifact creatures onto the battlefield.
Yeah, so it's 6 power by itself sometimes, and then it has also Flying Vigilance and Lifelink. And, it's just 4th in line for 5s in white right now. Maybe worse than 4th.
I don't know.
It's
it's kind of nice in a token deck, though.
It's great in a token. Actually, any deck that's going wide, right? It's other creatures you control get +1/+1 is a very, very relevant ability. So... I think there's probably some version of green-white tokens that's going to come out in this format where you're going to see maybe double Nissas or Nissa Gideons. Maybe that'll be something. But I have a hard time believing that Angel of Invention is the preferred 5-drop, anything in that deck. Thalia's Lancers might just be better because you have, it's either more Archangel Avacyns or you have a Brazella sub-theme or something. But... I don't know. Anything that gets you life at a cheap or 0 cost, I think, is something that you can kind of back pocket that for a sideboard card. I think that's something here. But when Angel of Invention was one of the first cards I saw spoiled, and I was like, oh wow, this card is really, really cool, and I think it's probably going to be an interesting card to talk about and play. But competition is going to be ridiculous at this casting cost. It's already ridiculous.
What do you think of Wisp-Weaver Angel? Speaking of some of the Stalies Lancer stuff, and that's not directly, because Stalies Lancer obviously doesn't search up Wisp-Weaver Angel, but just in the sort of the big, expensive white angel space. Wisp-Weaver Angel is 4 white for a 4/4 flyer. When Wisp-Weaver Angel enters the battlefield, you may exile another target creature you controlled and return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control.
I think this card is very expensive for what it's doing for you in the current context. That's my main issue with it. It's obviously something I would want to do at some casting cost. But what
about its upside compared to Restoration Angel?
Wait, its additional point of power?
No, it can blink angels. So if you have 2 Wisp-Weaver Angels, you have an infinite loop. And if you have any card that gains life whenever you play, whenever you have a creature come into play, you can, just gain infinite life.
Oh, okay. So actually, that's probably awesome then.
Right, there's a few triggers. I don't know about awesome, because it is a 6-mana 4/4 flyer that, there's a lot of great expensive cards. But it's got at least a purpose, which is the infinite combo if you get 2 of them. And if you have a creature that's a clone, you actually only need 1.
Okay.
So that's at least something, right? That's something.
I think that one of the decks I was going to toy with going into the new format with all the rotations is some sort of a version where you have an Eldrazi Displacer or Brood Monitor kind of infinite combo, and this guy probably has some kind of a home in that kind of a deck, right? Like 2 Wisp-Weaver Angels, and then the 3 casting cost got Soul Warden that can flip. Yep. Is that a kill or de facto?
Well, you gain infinite life.
That's pretty good.
I mean, if they Planeswalker Ultimate you somehow, maybe certain people's Planeswalkers could win. A lot of them can't, though.
Yeah, but I think that's pretty strong.
That's definitely going to beat most people, particularly if you have a way to make sure you don't get decked.
So, all right, closing thing. Last sure. Guy, just grab a closing card you want to talk about. Who's it going to be?
What about Aether Meltdown?
Which one is Aether Meltdown?
1 in a blue, enchantment or a flash, enchant creature or vehicle. When Aether Meltdown enters the battlefield, you get energy. Enchanted permanent gets -4/-0. You're probably not into this one yet, but I bet you're going to love this card by next month. Maybe we should pick a different one.
I think it's good. Right? So it's just permanently on this guy, right? It has flat. It's like a Encase of Ice.
Yeah, how could you think that I would love 2 energy and it has flash?
Yeah, I like it. Well, Encase of Ice had flash.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and it can hit anything, not just red or green.
But it hits also vehicles.
Also vehicles, including the Smuggler's Copter.
Yeah, I think I am down for energy, right? So I am so down for energy. I think. What do you think about Confiscation Coup, right? The mind control that gains 4 energy? I was just like, wow, this card might be good. It's pretty bad as just a mind control, but contextually, it as it can build on energy or consume energy. Anything with energy, I just want to give it a second look.
Actually, there is one card we should touch on before.
All right,
that's the counterspell, the 1 in a blue, the 2 mana. The rebuff, it's because this is a really controversial one. Revolutionary rebuff is 1 in a blue, counter target non-artifact spell unless its controller pays 2.
It's funny to me because when you said the counterspell, I was thinking the UU1 that you return a permanent to your hand.
Yeah, no, I'm talking revolutionary rebuff. 1 in a blue, target non-artifact spell unless its controller pays 2.
I think this card is a trap.
Me too.
Not good enough for a sideboard card and a super inconsistent main deck card. This is exactly the kind of card that Reed Duke would look at you funny for playing.
This card is this is how bad are you how bad do you want a 2-mana counterspell that can hit anything? It can't even hit anything. It doesn't hit Smuggler's Copter.
I think this card is going to make the minimum bar, right? The minimum bar is, did it top 8 in sideboard of an SCG Open or better, right?
Well, I don't think they're going to be in the sideboard. It's going to be in the main deck if they're going to play it at all.
No. The bar is sideboard or better, right? So, but this is an atrocious sideboard card. So
it is atrocious. But it's going to show up in people's main decks, and it might not even be that bad, because maybe the format is so fast that you really are just willing to play this because you're like, I just really want to counter Liliana or Nissa or whatever, or Chandra, I don't know. Maybe it's it's probably, like, not terrible. It's just, it looks like it's quite a bit worse than, like, I don't know, horribly awry.
All right, do you remember when you liked Cancel and nobody else liked Cancel, right? You still, like, it's in your heart, right?
Yeah, of course.
I hated Cancel, but there was just some decks.
Sometimes
put a Cancel, and it was like the best card in my deck. And
this card is a Cancel among counter spells that cost 2. This is definitely.
I hated it every single time. I'd have like all these awesome planeswalkers and card drawing, and I would just draw this stupid Cancel, and it would like counter the correct half of the Bloodbraid Elf, so I didn't lose, and then I would win with my awesome planeswalker. Or like it would counter my opponent's Jace, or counter my opponent's Cruel Ultimatum, and like I would feel so smart. They'd be like, Cruel Ultimatum, and you're just like, Cancel, and they're just like, how could you have lowered yourself to beat me with a Cancel? And I'm like, but I beat you with the Cancel, and every time I thought of you, and I was just like, God, I hate that Patrick is right about this one.
I don't recommend people play it for release this weekend.
But Revolutionary Buff stinks of Trap to me.
Yeah, but you might need it. All right. Have fun this weekend at the pre-release. So find us on this is Top Level Podcast on everything.
On everything.
Twitter, Facebook, Patreon. Major thanks to everybody coming out, supporting us on all these different platforms, and sharing us on social media. YouTube. You got a YouTube channel?
Yeah, all that. Yeah. All right, so shout out to Jasper Birch from Patreon. Thanks, Jasper.
Thank you, Jasper.
And shout out to everyone for supporting us, like Patrick said. And good luck at the pre-release this weekend.
All right. See you, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Work so great. Tried to play dredges for jail or hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to fight